You are listening to Kapatid Central, where we talk about the difficult topics the way only siblings can. Now here are your hosts, Donna, Delia, Darlene, and Neil.
Welcome to our first episode ever. We are very, very glad that you're here and that we get to share our thoughts, opinions, and life experiences with you. To start, I think it's just proper for the four of us to introduce ourselves, and we're just going to do it by age. Youngest first, so that's me. My name is Neil. I just turned 30 last year, so I'm in that area where half of the society is telling me that I should settle down, but the other half of it is telling me you only live once. I'm currently residing in the Philippines.
I'm going to go next. My name is Darlene. I'm second to the last. I'm 38 years old and I live in Singapore with my family.
I am Delia. I am second to the eldest, and I am here in the Philippines. My sisters and my brother will not agree with me, but everybody says that I am the prettiest in the family.
I was expecting I'd be the first one because I thought you'd say the youngest looking first. So I am Ate Donna. They call me Tedon. I've been living in Singapore for quite some time now, and I'm the youngest looking in the family. That's all.
Sabi niya. Opinion niya yan.
That's what she thinks.
So Neil, this is our first episode.
Yes.
Would you like to tell our listeners why you thought about creating this podcast? Because this is really your brainchild, right?
Right. Okay. So a little backstory about this podcast. I've been working from home since 2017. And every time I work, I just listen to podcasts because it helps me feel that there are people around me. Because I don't like the feeling of being alone in one room. I miss the corporate setting where you have, your coworkers surrounding you. Recently, I feel like napahinggan ko na lahat ng podcast na ang host Filipinos. Last week, I sent out a tweet asking my friends if they actually want to start a podcast with me because I feel like I have other experiences as well. And important opinions, I think, na other people would be willing to listen to. Pero none of my friends wanted to join me. So I messaged Ate Darl and almost immediately she said yes about creating this podcast with me. So Ate Darl, why did you say yes nga pala?
Of course. Why won't I? I think first of all, I wanted to support you. And by the way, I think you just admitted that you are single and available there when you said you're alone in a room and all that stuff. Yeah, I wanted to support you firstly. And this has been something I've been playing in my head for a while since the start of the circuit breaker here in Singapore. It would be nice to reach out to some more people and discuss pertinent information, pertinent topics. So yeah, why not? And then we thought we'll just invite the entire brood. So even if we thought that they're a little old for this podcast, we still invited Ate Del and Ate Don. Ate Del, why did you want to join us anyway?
Well, I like that you said a little old. At least our listeners will only think that we are like 5 or 6 years older than you. So anyway, I did want to be the killjoy in the family, so I am joining this podcast to support my younger sibling.
So lahat naman tayo busy, and so we can only do this on the weekends because all of us are actually working. I'll start. I am actually working as a client trainer. And when I say client trainer, people automatically think that I am a personal fitness trainer. And they would look at me from head to toe and say, you cannot be a personal fitness trainer. That's not actually what I do. I teach people how to work around a very customized energy research and consulting website. I don't have to explain that. I don't think my husband can explain it to anybody else as well. But I do work full-time. And Ronil, of course, you do work full-time as well.
I do. I'm currently a brand designer. So this is another job as well. Whenever I tell people na I'm a brand designer, people would ask, so do you design clothes? I guess hindi rin familiar yung mga tao. I think we have so many jobs nowadays na hindi na clear compared to before na kapag sinabing I'm a doctor, everybody knows kung anong ginagawa mo. No? So as a brand designer, basically, I help businesses grow their ads, their marketing efforts through branding them. So from print to digital artwork, so I do all those things. Atila, what do you do?
My job is actually, everybody knows what a teacher does. So when you say I am a public school teacher, everybody will think, oh, a public school teacher. But what they don't know is that I am a senior high school teacher. It's basically the last few years in basic education, and we are teaching students to be ready or to prepare the students for college or collegiate education. So it's not that easy. Although they said that being a teacher is the easiest job in the world, that if your profession, you don't get to hit your, what do you call that? Ideal
Quota?
profession, you end up being a
Ideal.
teacher. But no, it's not very easy being a teacher, you know. As they say, teaching is not really a profession, but a vocation. So I'm not going to start talking to you about my salary. So anyway, Ate Donna,
I'm a patient service associate. It's more on customer service. I assist doctors. I bill patient. I register patient in the outpatient clinic. Been there for about a year and a half now and enjoying it, although it's
But
tiring,
prior to that,
physically
Ate
tiring.
Don, you were a full-time mom for several years, right?
17 years to be exact. Yeah.
17.
years.
Wow.
To be
actually
honest,
almost
Neil,
their entire married life.
entire married life. Actually, Neil, just listening to our older sisters here, it feels like their jobs are very noble compared to ours. You have a public school teacher.
A healthcare worker.
Teaching is not a vocation.
No, teaching is a
and then you
vocation,
have
you mean,
somebody
darling.
from it is a
Yes,
vocation,
it
is
is.
it?
It is not
It
a
is.
profession, but a vocation. That's how they say it.
Ah, that's right. And then you have, a frontliner in the health industry, helping people who are sick in this COVID times. And then you have teachers like Atidel who are going through e-learning with students, who are basically saving all of the parents' lives. It just makes me feel very proud that I have sisters like this. During other days, I'm not very proud, but today I'm quite proud to hear about what they're doing. So that's great. That's great. I think, just going back to the part when we were talking about why we wanted to do this podcast or why we were willing to do this podcast was because also when we were younger, I think all of us had similar ambitions on becoming a performer or newscasters or journalists. Is that right, Ate Don?
I wanted to be a model.
Nang alin? 555.
Hindi. Ano ba nga? Basta eh. I like fashion. I like dressing up myself. I like wearing makeup. That's why I chose this. After 17 years of staying at home, when I went back to work, I really chose a profession that would let me wear makeup every day, especially the kilay, because kilay is life.
It's life.
Mhm.
And this is embarrassing, but I also want to just put it out there. Na-remember ko kasi, nung high school ako, what do you call that? Yung yearbook, right? So you have to write down kung ano yung gusto mo maging after 10 years. So nilagay ko rin actually fashion model. Hindi ko alam kung nasa family ba natin gusto yung ganon. Ikaw ba, Tidal? Did you ever wanted to be a model o kami Tidona lang?
Well, I'm interested to know what Ate Del would say first, because first of all, she's 5'1".
Well, I am only 5. I'm not even sure if I'm 5. Perhaps 4'11". Well, actually, this is where I will be different from all of you. I really didn't want to be in the performing arts industry. Well, not that I didn't want to, but I have higher goals. Charot. No, I mean, I
Wow.
wanted to be in the, I wanted to be in the medical field, in the medical profession. Unfortunately, well, yes, unfortunately, finances cannot support me in the medical school. And I had my Ate Donna who supported me in taking mass communication. So I ended up finishing mass communication, but I really wanted to be a physical therapist or really a doctor. I wanted to be a doctor. When I applied for entrance exam in FEU, I actually wrote there physical therapy, but never mass communication.
Mm-hmm. I remember during that time as well, physical therapy was so in demand. They were looking for therapists in the UK and in the US, and I think you wanted to do those things, no?
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually enrolling that day and asking the registrar to enroll me in physical therapy course. But then they said that the curriculum is not yet ready. It will take about another 3 to 4 months to be ready. And I'm afraid to go home not enrolled in the university. And I'm afraid that my father would hang me upside down because I had the money to enroll myself in university, but going back home not enrolled. So I just said, okay, what course can I take? And then the registrar, the person in the registrar said, your voice is nice. Why don't you take mass communication? And so I did. And then my sister, oh yeah, mass
And this,
communication
what
is good
year
for
are
you.
we talking about here?
That was 1994.
What year were we talking about? 1994.
My goodness,
My
Ronilo was
goodness.
only 4 years
It
old
was
then.
like
Or-
eons
And you were
ago.
like what, 11,
It was
9
eons ago.
years old.
26 years
Yeah.
ago.
So I ended up taking mass communication, did very well because they said that I have the talent. So I
Wow.
ended up being a teacher. My talent went to teaching.
So did you plan that out? Did you plan that out that after
What, being a
graduation
teacher? No.
you'll be a
It's-
teacher? Yeah.
No. It's because even before graduation, some of my university professors were already inviting me to apply for a teaching post. So, if you're a fresh graduate, not even a graduate yet, but you wanted to get a job immediately, you're excited to get a job. So the first offer came and I took the first offer, of course. And so
I think it's important also to know that Ate Del actually is an alumni of FEU. And to be offered a post in FEU after graduation is no small feat. I think you were also earning a lot that time, no? Kaya better na yung pagiging PT if you can actually get the same money teaching.
yeah, and I think we are where we are supposed to be, right?
That's right. Pero siguro, syempre ako naman, I am where I am supposed to be. Sige na nga, pwede din. Siguro, tama naman yun. Kinakonvince ko pa rin yung sarili ko. I did want to become a newscaster. I remember I really wanted to be someone like Corina Sanchez. So that's what I was aiming for at that time. But then, of course, you grow up and suddenly you realize walang pera sa media industry.
Meron naman.
Unless mag-artista ako. Hindi kagandahan ang ngipin ko noon. So Ate Donna was actually the one who gave me braces. So ano talaga, meron talagang mga pangarap na hindi for you. And that's okay. The pangaraps, the dreams that we don't get, then we just make new dreams.
So how about
I agree.
radio? Did you ever think of auditioning for radio before? Ate Del?
I did. I actually thought, I did think about auditioning for radio before, but I guess I had some hesitations because, listening to the radio, what do you call them, DJs? So like Chico and Delamar, for example, they're so good at what they do. And I just didn't think that I was at par with them. I remember we interviewed Delamar in the past, and I know she has a podcast as well, which I follow. And she said, if you want to be fluent in English, you also have to think in English. And so you can speak English fluently. And I thought to myself, I think in Tagalog, no? I think in pure Tagalog every single day. So there's a lot of processes that go through before that actually comes out verbally in English. So it was a hesitation that I did at the time. So it didn't happen, but still, like what Ate Del said, we are where we are supposed to be.
I just have a question about thinking in Tagalog. Since both you and Ate Donna are now living in Singapore, do you still think in Tagalog or do you usually think in English now? Since English is basically what you use every day.
Sure, but maybe I still think in Tagalog because every time after work, I feel so tired. I feel exhausted. I feel very tired. My brain cells are all tired because of, just speaking in English. I don't know. Maybe it's because I keep on thinking in Tagalog and then I try to translate it in English. So it drains my brain cells. That's why
Kaya
it's
mo
so
yan,
tiring.
Tidon. Kaya mo yan. And you're making Ate Donna more exhausted by asking her to speak in English today. No, but it's really exhausting. I don't think natural English speakers understand the stress of having to speak in a language that you did not grow up speaking in.
Yeah,
Does take
I
a
always
toll.
tell my colleague in the clinic that when I was young, English language was not common. It's either you are sobrang mayaman or you came from abroad. People would look at you from head to toe if they would hear you speak English. So
parang ang arte mo, di ba? Ang arte-arte mo.
we would only speak English kapag nasa school kami. And it's only for English subject. So it's not really common where I grew up. I don't know. Now it's different. Kasi us,
Mhm.
our era was different. Yours, ngayon ata kahit sa Pilipinas ngayon, everybody would try speaking Taglish. So before
Right.
kasi sa amin,
Mhm.
hindi. Chris
Yeah.
Aquino just started it. No, I was already
Really?
what? Yeah. Chris Aquino was the
Oh.
one who started the Taglish. I
Mm.
think that's
Very
the,
interesting
yeah.
kasi Ate Delia, Ate Delia still lives in the Philippines, in Cavite City, where you grew up in.
Mm.
And she speaks English to her children. Her children speak English as well, right, Adele?
Yes, they do, but I will not take credit for that. My children grew up watching English movies, English
yeah.
cartoons, you
Now
know.
it's different.
So I will not
It's
take
totally
credit for that.
different.
Although I did try to talk to them in English, train them in English when they were still very young. But I would like to share a story, if you may. There was a time my eldest was only 2 years old. She came home crying because nobody wants to play with her. And
Mm.
I asked her why. She said, it's because they cannot understand me. So that was the time I changed my training for her. So I started talking to her in Tagalog. She would understand Tagalog. And from that day on, she found friends. But now, you can hear everybody, not everybody, but most people are trying to learn the language.
That may be
Right.
because of the social media.
True.
Mhm.
Because if you really
I just
want
want to share
be in
something.
Plays a really big part.
Yeah, I just want to share something as well because I noticed kapag nandito ako sa Philippines, I think in English, but then I speak in Tagalog. But when I'm in other countries, let's say, when I was studying and working in the US, I would speak, of course, in English, but then I would think in Tagalog. And I don't know why that is. I was thinking maybe it's my brain's way of preserving the other language that I don't use every day or normally. That's why that
That's
happens.
talent.
I don't know. Kasi, kapag nagsawa ka na speaking the language that you're speaking every day, for some reason, ako sa isip ko, I use the other language. Pero I understand how it's tiring to speak English all the time because I remember when I was doing my internship, a coworker asked me, so what are you most excited about if ever you come back to the Philippines? And I told her,
You were in Florida then.
I was in Florida.
Just to be clear, you were in Florida.
Right. Yeah, I was in Florida at that time doing my internship. And then I told her the number one thing that I actually miss is speaking in Tagalog because it's really tiring to speak in English. Like when I wake up in the morning and then I have a roommate who only speaks English, then immediately my mind would need to be thinking and speaking in English. And sometimes I'm not ready yet for that. Kasi we're used to waking up speaking in Tagalog. So it was very, very tiring for me at that time. But now I'm in the Philippines again.
But in fairness, some of my colleagues, they say I speak good English, and they're asking if you were mayaman, you were rich in the Philippines, that's why your English is good. And then I told them, no, we're not rich. I didn't grow up in abroad, but I told them maybe because we belong to a church, to a religious organization, that helped. Reading scriptures, so I think it helped growing up in the church. Yeah.
Can I just say that comment that you got from your colleagues? I think some of them are, I don't know how to say this politically correct.
No, because
Some of them are really biased comments. Some of them are really biased comments, and they think you can speak English because you come from a rich family, because their idea of the Philippines is a third world country. Well, we don't even use third world anymore. We use developing country, and we all live in little huts by the seashore. We have to travel by boat to get food. These are unconscious biases, and probably when they go to Manila, they would see that it's actually not the case. So a lot of instances, people have these unconscious biases, especially to Filipinos, based on what they hear and see in the news.
I want to share something also. When I was there, I worked in Singapore for 4 years, remember? So when I was there, I met somebody, a Singaporean. I love my Singaporean friends, don't get me wrong. But someone asked me, oh, you're from the Philippines. So where do you live? I was like, what do you mean, where do I live? Do you have houses? Of course, I said. She was under the impression that we all live up on trees. Really?
Wow.
Yeah. And when I shared that to my husband said, didn't she study history or geography or whatnot? Because you're not supposed to think like that about Filipinos. So that's why I think Darlene's comment is correct, that they are giving unconscious bias comments, right? because some of them are not really familiar with the country, with Manila.
Right.
Unfortunately, perhaps they haven't, they never talk about it in school. Well, you can ask your kids if they talk about
That
our
colleague of
country.
yours was what? How old was she?
Singaporean.
She was your age, same
No,
same your age. Hindi?
Very young. She was only
Very young, huh?
when I was there. She was only 24, 23. That young.
Yeah. And all of these are unconscious biases, and they don't know it because, as the name implies, it is an unconscious bias. So we just need to be educated about different contexts, about different cultures, so that we don't, ask people questions like this. And one of the things I learned as well, and it's, I think, I was going to say something that's unconscious bias because I was about to say, Asians are very outspoken, very direct. But I think I can say it because I'm an Asian. Asians are very direct when we say, how much do you make? And we will also ask, how much do you pay for your flat? And things like this. And apparently for Caucasians, that's a no-no. You don't ask somebody's salary. You don't ask how much they're paying for their home because it gives you an insight of how much they are getting, how much they are making. But it's such an Asian thing to be asking about personal matters like this. To be honest, some of this I think are very useful. Personally, I've never asked anyone how much they make. I think that's just very cheap and not classy at all if you have to ask somebody how much they make. But these are things that have been ingrained in us. Over time, it's been ingrained in our heads, and it's just so difficult to change it. Just like English, for example. People think that you have to be rich to be able to speak English if you're from the Philippines. People think that you come from a very good school if you're rich. People think that you are smarter than everybody else when you can speak English in the Philippines.
You can speak good English.
But the truth is...
It's pathetic, right?
Hello, excuse me. There's a lot of, very Tagalog-speaking Filipinos who are smarter than a lot of the native English speakers out there.
That's true.
And you can tell I feel strongly about this because my octaves went higher several decibels.
I just want to circle back to what you said because you mentioned Asians normally ask those questions that Caucasians wouldn't. By Asians, you mean maybe just Filipinos? I really haven't talked to any other South Asians who would blatantly ask me how much my salary is. So you have experienced that? That's why that's your opinion about it?
I have, definitely. In the Philippines, definitely. Everybody asks that.
Oh, yeah.
I think more is it maybe a Southeast Asian culture thing, but I also know money is a big deal when it comes to the North Asian countries. The Chinese, for example, is very money oriented because wealth and prosperity is such a big thing. Even in Chinese New Year, what they always work for or hope for, prosperity, good health, all these are part of what we call wealth. And so I guess that's something that's included in the language, in the conversations, and the way we talk to each other really reflect what our priorities are.
Awesome. So I think that's a very, very good discussion today. Thank you for your insights and opinions, mga kapatid. So for next week...
Ano bang gagawin natin next week? Do we have to speak English next week, starting next week, or Tagalog is okay? So
I think our lives will be much, much easier if we spoke in Tagalog. But we also have listeners who can only speak English. My kids, for example, would want to listen to this, and I think it would be useful for us to also speak English.
Well, I grew
up
with Chris Aquino era, so I'd rather speak Taglish.
Sa totoo lang kasi ang dami namang mga words na ang hirap sabihin sa Tagalog na hindi mo na alam paano sabihin sa Tagalog.
And I don't want to tire myself again. I speak English the whole week. And then Saturday comes, joining podcast with you, then I have to speak English again. Oh, too much. I'd rather speak Tagalog.
Well, Taglish is the way to go, Ate Don.
Okay.
All right. Well, again, thanks everyone for listening. And we hope to have you join us again next week. All right. Have a good rest of your week, guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.
Bye, kapatid.